the Houston Texans. I know you wanted to get to this team here, this organization, 1-10-1 right now, the regular season. They're taking on the Dallas Cowboys coming up on Sunday as 16.5-point underdogs. But the Texans made the decision to go back to Davis Mills as the starting quarterback. But just from an overall organizational standpoint, what went wrong in Houston and how should they go about fixing it?
I think what's gone wrong in Houston is simply alignment, right? And so when Houston hires Nick Caserio to come in, Nick has been brought up in the same system that I was in since Cleveland of 91. And that system, for lack of a better term, people call it the Patriot system. Mm-hmm. And people are very anti to that because they really don't understand what it means, right? So the Patriot system is not about, Belichick talking to the media. The Patriot system is a foundation to which you build an organization. And it really starts with the secret sauce within it is player development. It starts with coaches that understand their role. It starts with coaches that understand their roles to develop talent. It starts with a head coach who's separate from the assistants, who can demand from the assistants. It starts with game-specific each week, changing your system each week. It starts with players that are adaptable, that love football, that have multidimensional skills. So when Nick goes down to Houston, he's looking for a head coach. And people say, well, you can't hire a Patriot guy. Patriot Way won't work. Well, the problem is, for me and for Nick, we only really understand the game through that vein. We really don't. We only understand the game through that way. I watch a different game than other people watch based on how I was trained. Mm-hmm. And so for me to go and take somebody like David Culley, who's never been in that system, I would be talking Italian and he would be talking Chinese. It just doesn't work, right? And then he comes back and hires Lovey, which is the same scenario. And so for me, the biggest mistake in Houston has been alignment. If Nick is going to be the general manager, then Nick has to get somebody who is aligned with the philosophical nature of what he believes in, which is player development, which is defining the roles of every player, holding players accountable, working extra hard. It's not about being a dictator. It's not about putting a pencil behind your ear. It's about a structured program. And unless you've been in that program, it's really challenging. I was talking to a college coach the other day who had worked for a lot of different places, and he's like, having been in New England and been other places, it's kind of like I can get it. Like everybody thinks New England does what everybody does. Like if somebody said, did you read Gridiron Genius and you're a football coach? People say, well, no, we do that. I mean, I remember talking to Jason Garrett at a wedding, at Scott Turner's wedding. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about all different things. And, we do that. Like that mentality that he has is the prevalent mentality. Everybody thinks they do what is in the Patriot way, but they don't do it that way. And there lies the difference. And Nick, who should have known that he's only effective as a personnel guy with alignment from the head coach. This is what kills all of us in sports. Like, for me, if I would have stayed, thank God I got fired in Cleveland because I would have been a shitty GM for Mike Pettin. I was a shitty GM for Jarob Chaszynski. For me, it didn't work. The reason I wanted to hire Josh McDaniels in Cleveland was to get alignment, to get somebody who saw the game the way I saw it. And I think that's the hard part. And so for Houston, before you even get to the first pick in the draft, before you even decide who's your quarterback, if they don't get alignment, it's never going to work.
Is there someone out there that you think is ready to be a head coach that they could hire for this upcoming 2023 season? Now, Lovey's still the coach, and there haven't been anything about any reports about making a change there. But, I mean, you can read the tea leaves and how this is kind of going, the way this season has gone, that I don't think Lovey is long for that job. Who should be at the top of their list for someone that they would want to hire as a head coach?
Well, they wanted to hire Brian Flores until he hit the lawsuit, which would have been a really good hire for them. Because Brian, like Nick, has grown up in the system. Now, what I'm saying about hiring somebody that understands the system, I'm not saying you have to hire somebody who does it exactly the way Bill does. You got to hire somebody who understands how Bill does it, right? Mm-hmm. That's the difference. Mike Vrabel was never in New England as a coach, but Mike Vrabel understood the core tenets of the New England program. And then he applied his teachings and his methodology to that, and holding players accountable, demanding from the assistants, doing all those things, being a head coach, right? It's like the reason New England doesn't have a lot of experienced coaches on their staff is because when they hire veteran coaches who are not trained in this system, the coaches get completely they don't understand it. Like most coaches, I want to watch the last 3 games of our opponent. Well, New England's not going to do that. New England's only going to watch games that apply to their scheme as it applied to the team they're playing. That's a foreign concept to most teams. Now, is that the right way to do it? I don't know that, but I know that's the way I do it. And that's the way Nick does it. And so for Nick not to have somebody with alignment, he's going to continue to have a disaster, and he's going to continue to hurt his career because he doesn't have this.
And I think that's why you saw the Las Vegas Raiders go out and get Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels kind of as a package deal in a sense, because Ziegler coming from that area and understanding what it is in the Patriot Way, and McDaniels clearly having a grasp on that as well, to where they can kind of be aligned and not really make a Patriots West, but just kind of have the same alignment and see the game the same way. And I think that's probably, and it's interesting because I've never heard it described this way, Michael. I'm really glad that you brought it up, because I think a lot of people always talk about how, look at all these Belichick assistants who have failed as head coaches. Like, look at all these guys who have failed, that have all struggled, and then they go run back to New England. But this is the way what you're describing is probably one of the reasons why they don't have as much success as people think that they should have as head coaches.
Right, because most of what they're trying to do is run the New England system. But the guy who invented it, the guy who mastered it, he's hard to duplicate. So it's challenging. And a lot of the coaches that have worked there really don't truly understand it. And then they hire coaches who are not accustomed to being in that system. Mm-hmm. Like, they're not accustomed to that. And so there's a lot of resentment. There's a lot, I don't know, I don't have any say here. Most coaches on most teams, the running back coach of let's say the Carolina Panthers, he wants to be able to pick who the players are. Well, that's not the way it is in the New England system. He'll have a say, he'll have a voice, but he's not controlling the talent on the team. And for some coaches, that really becomes a problem, which is fine. And so it's hard to get everybody to see it the same way you see it, and so it's very challenging. When Scott Pioli went to Kansas City, he hired Todd Haley. Todd Haley doesn't see it. Todd Haley didn't get it. It's challenging. It's challenging to find somebody that can get that and is willing to do it within their own way. I mean, when Matt Patricia went to Detroit, Matt thought he knows it, but Matt really didn't know it. Matt was part of it. He couldn't master it. And Bob Quinn, who was his general manager, truly didn't understand what the mechanisms were to how to develop it. And so it takes a organizational structure, and it's hard to find. And it's hard to find that specific guy to do it. Nick would have been better off taking a college coach and training him into how he wanted him, and being that kind of than he is hiring a veteran guy. Because, it makes no sense. You hire Lovey, who runs covered Tampa 2, and Nick, that's not part of anything that they do. Lovey's going to play Tampa 2 this week. He's going to play it next week. He's going to play it the week after. Yeah. Whereas in the New England system, we may play Tampa 2 this week, but we may play zero blitz the next.
That's fascinating stuff. I guess what can Caserio do then now going forward, as we kind of last point on this here, because it's almost, does he need to convince ownership of here's a guy who I need to hire, or is it he needs to kind of just not go back to the well and go to try to pick somebody from New England staff, or somebody who understands it, or somebody that is willing to learn? I guess what advice would you have for him moving forward about how he can get that alignment in 2023 and beyond?
What he has to do is try to convince the owner and his wife, that the reason it's not Lovey's fault. We're not aligned. And for you to be successful in any industry, you need to get alignment. And alignment doesn't mean give the coach all the power. The alignment doesn't mean give me all the power. Alignment needs, philosophically, everybody needs to be on the same page. Why is Buffalo successful? Because Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane have alignment. They're aligned in how they see the game, right? They're aligned in how they see the game. And so that alignment allows them to be able to eliminate players, not find players. Well, that guy doesn't fit for what we want to do. It's like Buffalo. They want to have a nickel defense all the time. So, they look for certain players that fit what their scheme is. Same thing with offensively. Whereas if you or me, maybe that wouldn't work for me. I would want maybe a 3 technique that can play the run, or somebody who was physical inside. I think that's kind of how it goes until Nick hasn't been able to communicate to the Houston ownership that alignment is more important than anything. And Nick can't overcome, as he's learning, he can't overcome deficiencies from the head coach, just like I learned it painfully. You think you can become better, but you can't overcome the coach.
Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.